It is so late. It's 8:50 p.m. But I wanted to hop on because I've had so many consultation calls this week, and I honestly wanted to address something because I'm the type of coach who sees the potential in people. And it really pains me when I see people with a lot of potential, a lot of executives with a lot of potential getting underpaid and making $180,000, $150,000 when they could be making $300,000. And so, if you fit into that bucket, doesn't matter where you are in your career, and you know deep down inside that you could be making more, that you deserve more, I want to give you a framework that's going to help you break through that stagnation. So, let me start with some research. A clinical psychologist named William Miller spent his career studying why people change, and he co developed what he calls motivational interviewing. It's one of the most proven frameworks for behavior change. But what kept him up at night wasn't the people who changed gradually, it was the people who changed overnight. So think about any goal that you have that you aspire to achieve. Wouldn't it be incredible if you were able to achieve it overnight? If you have a bad habit, whether it is losing weight, hitting the gym more frequently, whatever that goal is, let's talk about how you can achieve it. Now, people who had been stuck for years, trapped in addiction, depression, destructive patterns, who suddenly, inexplicably transform, not slowly, not through therapy, all at once. Miller called these quantum changes. And when he studied them, he found something that challenges everything we think we know about how transformation works. Now, some of you are in the transformation space, and it's kind of interesting how I see people, especially executives who are in the transformation space, who are able to make changes at organizations, but they're terrified of making a change for themselves and in their career. Now, as I mentioned, this psychologist named Miller, he studied why people change and what motivates them. Now, what this psychologist observed is that the change was never about behavior. It was about values. People's entire hierarchy of what mattered to them reshuffled overnight. Things that had seemed important, status, approval, comfort, dropped away, and things that had seemed abstract, meaning, integrity, alignment, moved to the center of their lives. They didn't decide to prioritize differently. A lot of people, when they get on calls, tell me, well, I have a lot going on. I am doing a renovation in my house. I am taking a certification, whatever the excuse is to not make a change in their career. And this psychologist proved that when you have a goal, and the reason a lot of people are able to achieve their goal is when they prioritize. Well, actually, when it's not when they prioritize, it's actually when you lean into your values and think to yourself, is where I'm at and who I am right now in my career, is it aligned with my values? So that's the big thing. And let me see here the comments. Hello, hello, Philip and Spencer. Yes, you are on a roll, catching all my live streams. Thank you for your support. So going back to this, okay, because this is very important. Look, we all want to change, right? We all want to achieve things in our career. And I often find that what holds people back is honestly themselves. There's a lot of excuses that you want to make about the market, But honestly, you and I both know that making a change in your career, leaving an organization where you're not happy, it actually requires a behavioral change. Okay. So, going back to what the psychologist has noticed, things that had seemed important to an individual, such as status, approval, comfort, dropped away. Because you might be terrified to make a change in your career because you think that you are going to miss some of these things. Now, what becomes more important to drive that change is usually not money. It's actually meaning, integrity, alignment. That's what's going to actually motivate you to make a change. As much as people come to me and say, I want to make 300,000, I want to make 250,000, that's never a big enough reason for you to actually want to make that change. Okay? So, here are some of the behaviors of people who are able to successfully change. They didn't decide to prioritize differently. Different things became self evidently important in a way they hadn't been before. Now, I've spent more than 20,000 hours coaching over 1,000 leaders, mainly through executive career transitions. And I can tell you the same phenomenon happens in careers. And today I'm going to show you how to make it happen on purpose. So, who here, let me know in the chat, wants to make a change in their career? And if you don't want to tell me, maybe share with me where you are listening from. I'm curious. I'm always curious about what parts of the world people are from. Okay, so I want to talk to you about the career identity cage. Let me ask you something. How would you describe what you do? If you went to a dinner party and someone says, what do you do? What comes out of your mouth? Most of the executives that I work with say some version of their job title plus their company. I'm a VP of operations at Dell, for example. I lead product strategy for XYZ division. And it sounds professional, it sounds credible, but here's the problem. That's not your identity. That's what you're assigned to do. And you've confused the two. This is why you're struggling to make the move and make the change in your career. When you were early in your career, you had one overriding goal: survival. Not physical survival, I'm talking about professional survival, which in a corporate environment means one thing: staying connected to the people who control your career advancement, also known as your boss and your boss's boss, the senior leadership team. So you learned very quickly what got you promoted and what got you sidelined. You learned which ideas were safe to share and which would make you a target. Also known as, I don't want to ruffle any feathers because I want to keep my job. Special Agent FBI. That's hilarious. You learned what your organization believed about leadership, about success, about what kind of person was worthy of the next level. And you absorbed all of this, not as opinions, but it became your operating system. This is how career identities form. It's not a conscious process. These beliefs about your professional self are so deeply embedded that they run underneath every decision you make: what roles to apply to, how to price your value, what salary you should be asking for, what you think you're allowed to ask for. But here's where it gets very painful. Your career identity doesn't just define how you see yourself. It actively defends those definitions. When someone suggests you're capable of more, when a recruiter reaches out about a role that feels too big, when a coach tells you that you're underpositioned, your brain treats it like a threat. Your stress response activates. You feel the urge to dismiss it. deflect it, explain why it's not realistic for someone like me, right? This is why, for example, a brilliant director with 15 years of cross functional experience will look at a VP job description, see one bullet point that doesn't match exactly to what they've done, and talk themselves out of applying. Who has done that? Where you looked at a job posting and you told yourself that you don't have the experience and you don't qualify. You know that there are people out there who are less experienced than you who actually apply to that role and probably would get it, right? So that's the thing. This is not imposter syndrome, it's actually identity defense. You're defending the identity that you have right now, which honestly, okay, I'm not going to go there, but we'll get there. The most excruciating part, most of these identity level beliefs aren't even yours because you know that who you are right now doesn't actually match who you could be, right? And the thing is, you've been following all these orders at organizations for so long that you actually lost yourself. And all these ideas that are planted within you that you've tied your professional identity to were installed maybe by your first manager, reinforced by an HR system. I'll give you an example. I was talking to someone who said to me that they worked with a VP and that VP wasn't happy with the changes that they were making at the organization. And so they kind of pushed that person out and they left the company. And that person started feeling like they should go backwards in their career because of what happened. Who here had, let's say, a performance review and you got some negative feedback? You ended up internalizing it and you started believing that that definition that that person has created for you is who you are when it really isn't. Okay? So that's the problem. A lot of you are in an identity that doesn't even belong to you. And it's incentivized by an organization that benefited from your compliance, that told you that story so that they can keep underpaying you. You've been running someone else's code, your career, and you've mistaken it for your own operating system. This is what I call the career identity trap. And it's the real reason high performers and senior professionals, executives that are great at what they do, feel stagnant in their career, feel stuck. Not because you lack skills, not because the market is bad, because you're trying to advance a career while being held hostage by a definition of yourself that was never accurate in the first place. Okay? This is why I get on calls with people, and even like the first 2 weeks in my program, I have to literally reprogram how people see themselves because they've been beaten up for so long by their boss, by their team that has been disrespectful towards them. And they've been told, maybe by a therapist, just keep your head down, don't ruffle feathers so that you don't stress yourself out and you don't end up going on, stress leave, right? Because there aren't a lot of people out there who help you fix the root cause that's making you want to escape. You know, I see a lot of people use coping mechanisms because they're not happy with their career, such as, oh, let me, um, renovate my house to distract myself from how miserable I feel in my career. Let me get hobbies outside of work because they convince themselves that there's no such thing as being happy in their career and they have to find other sources of joy. Okay, so let's talk about why traditional career advice fails. Now, here's why most career advice is useless for people in this career trap. The standard playbook says update your resume, optimize for application tracking system, ATS, network more, set goals, woo woo, visualize the role you want. And look, that advice isn't technically wrong, but it's weak. It's weak because it tries to change your career behaviors without touching the identity generating those behaviors. So, back to the psychologist that I was talking about, Miller, he found the same thing in his research. When you try to change behavior through willpower alone, through gritting your teeth and forcing yourself to just apply or just ask for a higher salary, you're swimming upstream against your own value structure. But when you reorganize your values, the behaviors flow naturally. I see this every week in my practice. Someone comes to me and says, Nada, I know I need to aim higher. I know I'm undervalued. I just can't seem to be able to do it. That can't isn't a skill gap, it's an identity gap. And no amount of resume optimization will close it. That's like repainting the walls of a cage and calling it freedom. Okay? And I want to be direct about something. If you came to this live hoping that I'm going to share tips on AI or application tracking system optimization or how to get, past the keyword filters, look, I respect that, but that's not what we're going to be doing here. Okay? There are great people who do that work. I'm not one of them. What I do is I help senior professionals who've already proven that they're exceptional at what they do, but the market doesn't know it yet. If you're making 150,000, 170,000, even 185,000, and you know in your bones that you should be at 300,000 or 250,000, but every time you get close to doing something about it, you find a perfectly reasonable excuse, like renovating your house or saying, it's the kids' school year or the reorg that might open something up and another year passes. What you need isn't a better application strategy. Okay? What you need is a career earthquake that's going to shake you, a fundamental reshuffling of what you believe you're worth, what you believe you're allowed to claim, and what you believe is possible for someone like you. Because think about it. Let's use logic, since some of you will argue with me. If you're in an organization and the CEO of that organization did not believe that your organization can crush the competitor, can get the best clients, can charge more, then are they going to succeed? Absolutely not. You can come up with the best strategy, you can hire the most talented people, and that organization will stay stagnant. So it's the same thing for you. You need to believe that it is possible. If you don't believe that it's possible, no amount of, keyword stuffing in your resume is going to help you. So the question becomes, can you create that strategy on purpose? I believe you can, and I'm going to show you how. So most career coaches will tell you to start with a vision. Imagine your ideal role, meditate, picture yourself in the corner office. Hey, if you read my origin story, I was working with a career coach and she basically said to me, picture yourself, meditate. And all I could think of was me on a beach, dancing salsa in Miami. So obviously, I'm not going to tell you to do that because I tried it myself and it didn't work. I'm going to ask you to do the opposite. See, the thing is, human beings are not primarily motivated by reaching for something good. We are motivated by escaping something painful. True story. I'll do anything that's gonna, keep me from suffering and eating less and being on a low carb diet, even though my insulin levels are terrible and my cholesterol are off the charts right now. Yes, that can happen even when you're not obese. So I know firsthand that we are all motivated by escaping pain. And psychologists call this loss aversion. We feel the sting of losing something far more intensely than the satisfaction of gaining something equivalent. This is why the thought of applying for a job makes you not want to apply for a job, because you don't want to spend time doing that and it feels painful, like getting your taxes done. So you'd rather suffer in a toxic culture than do that, right? So instead of asking you to think of a rosy vision that you don't really believe in, what I'm going to ask you to do is what I call a career anti vision. So the anti vision doesn't ask you to imagine where you want to be. It forces you to stare directly at the career you're actually building right now with your current choices and to feel the full weight of these consequences. So here's the exercise. I know it's late, but humor me. You know, maybe this is a sign, if you found me and you're watching this, that you need to do this so that you can change your situation. And if you're watching the replay, you should try this exercise too. And if you are in the middle of, your workday, what you can do is actually click on my profile and DM me if you've lost the live so that you can watch the recording. So here's what I want you to actually do. The first step, okay, is to surface the career behaviors that you want to stop. Think about what you are doing right now that you know isn't serving you. Be brutally honest. Maybe you're applying to roles you're overqualified for. No one's going to judge you. You can write it down on a piece of paper. No one even needs to see this, okay? So maybe you're applying to roles you're overqualified for. Maybe you're accepting offers without negotiating. Maybe you're defining yourself by your title instead of your impact. Maybe you're staying at a company because it's comfortable, not because it's right. Or you're spending hours tweaking your resume, rewriting it, using ChatGPT, instead of doing the real work of articulating what makes you irreplaceable. I want you to write them down, all of them. And if you're brave, maybe share one of them with me in the chat. Step 2, find the underlying career identity connecting those behaviors. This is the hard part. What belief about yourself makes all of these behaviors logical? What belief about yourself makes it logical to stay at a company that's underpaying you? What belief about yourself makes it logical to apply for junior roles? In my experience, it's usually some version of one of these. Let me know if you identify with any one of them. I'm going to give numbers if you don't want to actually type them up. So, type 1, if that belief is, I'm only as valuable as my last title. Type 1, if part of the reason you haven't been applying to higher level roles or asking for that greater compensation is because you believe that you're only as valuable as your current or last title. Type 2, if your belief is I need to prove myself before I'm allowed to ask for more. Maybe you know in your heart that you deserve a promotion, but you have a belief that you need to prove yourself before you're allowed to ask for that higher salary. Or maybe you've just accepted an offer and you accepted it at a lower level because you feel you need to pay your dues and prove yourself before you're allowed to ask for more. So type 2, if that's a belief that you have or you've held in the past. Type 3, if you have a belief that people like me don't get those roles. And by the way, there's a lot of, let's say, definitions of what people like me mean. People like me who don't have a great network. People like me who are new in a country. People like me who don't have a title. People like me who are not technical. People like me who don't have AI experience. Whatever like me means. I was talking to an executive recently, and it was mind-boggling what he shared with me. He said to me, "Oh, I know AI. I've dabbled with it in 2000, but I haven't been using it for a while, and I just don't know if I should go for roles that have AI at the VP level." I'm like, "Oh my God, you're not supposed to be overly technical at a VP level. You're supposed to delegate to teams, right? They're the ones, the individual contributors are the ones who are supposed to have that deep technical mastery." Thank you for sharing, Nia. Sometimes I feel like I don't have skills for the higher level, even though I've been doing the work. Oh my God, yes, that is one of the beliefs that's holding you back. Thank you for sharing. Okay, type 4, if you identify with this belief. If I were really that good, someone would have noticed me by now. Oh my goodness. I'm sure there's at least one person who's listening who has that belief. Type 4, if you don't want to type it all up. I'm curious. I had that belief too in corporate. I used to think that, yeah, no, if I was really good at what I was doing, then a recruiter would have reached out to me by now. Okay, so find your belief. It's the one that's going to make your stomach tighten when you read it. I want you to write it down because you guys, the only way you're going to overcome these fears and hurdles is if you actually write it down, and you're going to realize how silly those blockers are when you read them. Okay, so let's talk about step 3. Build the anti-vision. Now take that identity that you have right now that's holding you back, and I want you to project it forward 3 years. Nothing changes, and you're exactly where you are, who you are. Project it forward 3 years with all of these behaviors and beliefs that are holding you back. 3 years. Imagine yourself 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and I want to honestly ask you, what is your career going to look like if you keep protecting this belief? Maybe you're 48, maybe you're 52, maybe you're 55, maybe you're 60. I work with a lot of clients, between the age of 45 and 65. And they are incredible at what they do. And they know that they're not ready to retire. And it's very important for them to make the best out of the 5 to 10 years that they have left. And think about how you've been passed over for the 3rd time. The person who got the role you wanted, who has less experience than you, but they positioned themselves as a category of 1 while you positioned yourself as a strong candidate. I want you to think about that for a minute. Now let's do the math that nobody wants to do. If you stay at 185,000 for 5 more years when you could be making 300,000, that's not a 115,000 gap. That's literally a 575,000 gap that you'll never get back. That's more than $500,000 that you're leaving on the table. That's your kid's college fund. That's the retirement cushion. That's the difference between choosing your next role and having to take whatever comes. And every year you wait, that gap compounds because the person who repositions earlier has a different trajectory than the person who repositions at 65. Your body is telling you something is wrong, but you keep pushing through because that's what hard workers do. That's what you've been taught by organizations. I want you not to be fair about this. Don't be balanced. Treat this identity the way you treat something you're furious with. Blame it for everything because here's the truth. Every single career outcome you're frustrated by is a perfect reason why you're not where you are. So here's what I want to say. The anti-vision burns off what I call the career fog, that state of vague satisfaction where you know something's off, but it's not painful enough to force you to act. The fog is where you stay in jobs 2 years too long. The fog is where you wake up 5 years later wondering what the heck happened. I know this happened to me because I literally lost half of my pancreas because of a job. I knew from week one that I should have left, but I stayed longer than I should have. And then while I was sitting in the hospital room with half a pancreas, with morphine being pumped into my blood, and I couldn't even lie down flat on the bed, and I had to prop all these pillows because I was in so much pain. I was sitting there wondering what the heck just happened. When you picture that anti-vision versus, ooh, let me manifest that dream and let me visualize myself making 300,000. Instead of doing that, use what this psychologist tool has provided, which is what he calls the anti-vision. The anti-vision is you picturing the worst case scenario if you stay where you're at, and your decision is going to become very clear when you do that. Okay. If the old identity was, I'm only as valuable as my last title, the contrary identity might be, I'm the person who transforms an organization's culture by helping teams collaborate effectively. And that's worth more than any title can capture. Okay? The contrary identity should feel true and terrifying at the same time. That is the opposite of what you're experiencing right now. And here's how you know you found it. It should be something that you know objectively is good for you, but makes you deeply uncomfortable. Your palms sweat, your brain generates 17 reasons why now isn't the right time. For some of my clients, the crack is reaching out to a company they think is out of their league. And then when they get that validation that they're not in danger, that they didn't die, that is their breakthrough. That is what makes them keep going. And for others, it's finally saying no to a role that pays well but kills your soul. For me, it was losing half of my pancreas, and I don't want anyone to get to that point, right, before they act. For some, your pivotal point or your turning point that's going to disrupt that same behavior that's putting you in autopilot mode and it's keeping you from achieving your goals could be reaching out to a coach, reaching out to a career coach, which in itself is an act of admitting that you can't do this alone. And that alone breaks the old identity. I know that there was one time, because I suffer from migraines and I really got to improve my diet. I'm sharing way too much here, but whatever. Just so you guys know that, I empathize with you all when it comes to making a change in our life. It's very hard to admit that you need help. And my breaking point, and try not to be too graphic here, was I went to this restaurant. I ordered a humongous, bowl of noodles. I ate the whole thing in one sitting. And I was so bloated and I felt so disgusting. I came home. I was on my bathroom floor, on all fours, not gonna, continue with the graphic details. And my dog was like licking my foot as I was on all fours with my forehead against the bathroom floor. And that is when I texted my coach, or a coach that I worked with before, and I said, we need to talk. I need to work with you because I know that if I keep going, that identity that I was picturing in my head of a person who is obese, who is unable to work, who's unable to show up like I am showing up right now and give you guys values and value and help you, that person is not going to exist. And I don't like that person. That is my anti, identity that I don't want. And I knew that the only way that I can disrupt that autopilot, mode was to reach out to a coach for help. So that could be you too. Maybe that is what you need. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. This exercise can surface the identity. It can burn off the fog. It can show you the crack. But most people cannot walk, through the crack alone. And that's not weakness. Remember what the psychologist Miller found about quantum change. It almost always involves a moment of surrender. Not giving up, but actually letting go of the belief that you have to figure this out by yourself, that you should be able to do this on your own, that needing help means you're not as capable as you thought. Or even the fear that I'm going to invest all this time and effort and it might not work, or maybe I'm not capable, right? That belief is your old identity talking, and it will keep you running on someone else's code for the rest of your career if you let it. And this is exactly the work that I do inside my practice. I help senior professionals, director, VP, C-suite, who are exceptional at what they do, but have never been positioned to match their actual impact and their higher level identity. We don't do resume rewrites. We do identity level repositioning. We find your career sweet spot. We build your category of one positioning. And we create a strategy that makes the market come to you at the 150K to 400,000 level and above. Look, the work isn't for everyone. It's for the executive and the senior professional who's done waiting for the market to recognize what they already know about themselves. So if what I shared with you hit a nerve, if you recognize yourself in any of this, I'd love to have a conversation. This is not a sales call. It's a diagnostic call. I'll tell you exactly what I see, what's holding you back, and whether I can help you. And if I can't, I'll also let you know. And so this is how you can book the call with me. I am going to share my screen because a lot of people, have trouble figuring out how to do that. Thanks to LinkedIn, they removed the ability to actually have your link in the heading, and they don't make it obvious. I've helped a lot of clients at, big tech and all kinds of organizations. I'm just waiting for one client that I help who ends up landing at LinkedIn. so that I can pass on all the feature recommendations. Okay, so let me show you how to book the call. So this is how you book the call. There is a button that says book an appointment. It's right underneath my heading. Okay. So if you're watching this live, click on my name. It's going to take you on my profile. Click on book an appointment. And then let me just show you here. When you click on book an appointment, it's going to take you to this page. Now, I invite you to watch this video because in this video, I actually share with you my own personal story so that you understand why I do what I do. And it also shares with you stories of clients that I've helped. If you see yourself in any of this, then it's a good sign, right? That I might be able to help you because we tend to learn better from people who have achieved what we want to achieve or people who have gone through similar life experiences. So book your career diagnosis. It'll take you to this 2-minute intake. Why does this intake exist? It helps me understand your situation more clearly so that I can help you and give you the best advice on this 15-minute call. So make sure that you go through it real quick and help me understand why this goal is important to you, right? Once you fill out all of these questions, it's going to allow you to book a time with me. So book a time that works for you. And like I said, this call is to simply figure out your situation, diagnose what's going on, and if it makes sense for us to explore working together, we can do that in a separate call. So hopefully, this has been helpful. I really encourage you to lean into what I shared because after doing this for more than 6 years and helping more than 1,000 people, I'm honestly a firm believer that a lot of people's blockers are psychological when it comes to their career. Now, my, program isn't going to be like a therapy program. Okay. It is a system that is designed to help you gain a lot of self-awareness. And I do give you the steps and the processes to rebrand yourself. But a big part of rebranding yourself is actually becoming very aware of what you offer to organizations. And I think what happens is when we've been in our career for a very long time, we kind of end up being on autopilot. We forget our gifts. We forget, what we've delivered. And so sitting down with someone who asks you the right questions and uncovers that and really asks you the hard questions as a sounding board to figure out what is it that actually brings you joy is so important. And then working with someone who creates a plan for you, just like how you create a strategy for organizations to undergo a transformation. We put that in place, we create the accountability, and then it becomes so much easier to actually stick to it and to achieve your goals. Okay, hope you have a wonderful night. And as usual, if what I've shared has been valuable for you, if you've got, some aha moments, I would really appreciate it if you share your aha moment in the comment. And at a minimum, just like this video. It gives me feedback. It encourages me to create more content. It does take a lot of effort to create this content, to come up with ideas. I don't get paid for this. I do this because I enjoy it. LinkedIn doesn't pay me for creating content. So I would really appreciate it if you like this because you know what you end up doing by liking this video? You end up actually helping someone out there who needs to see this. And wouldn't it be amazing for us to actually help more people? Okay, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will see you all soon.